Casual Magic has been sponsored by Quiver, maker of the Quiver and Bolt deck cases and other fine deck holding accessories. Use the code CASUAL on their website for 10% off your order. You can also support Casual Magic directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/ShivamB. And now, on with the show. Casual Magic, the show where we talk about the fun side of Magic the Gathering. My name is Shivam Bhatt, and Casual Magic is brought to you by Quiver and my patrons at patreon.com/ShivamB. Today, I am super excited to have a guest that I never would have dreamed of having. Maybe one of my favorite artists in the entire history of Magic. Certainly the guy who got me into the game in 1994. Richard Kane Ferguson. I honestly legit can't believe that I get to talk to you on this show. Thank you so much for joining me today, sir. It's an honor and a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me as well, actually, Shivam. I'm so glad we got past our technical, problems there. That was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it happens sometimes. There was one show I did where it took 17 tries before we could get a recording done. So I'm a patient person.
I hesitate to ask who that was with.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said I hesitate to ask who that was with.
Oh, it was with a comic artist who did Judge Dredd comics. And he was also a Magic player. So we were like, let's talk about the comics industry and about Magic. And it was a really great talk.
That should have been lively.
I'm sorry?
I said that must have been a lively conversation.
Oh, yeah, it was delightful. I think I'm going to need to ask you to talk a little bit louder just in general. But
I'll have to talk.
I'm loud and so I can hear my echo.
It must be my mic. I'll just,
it's fine. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. I'll get in closer.
So I have to say, you were one of the foundational artists of Magic. Certainly, arts like Dak and Blackblade and Sulkin the Swamp King, Hazazon Tamar, some of the most famous, iconic pieces of art in the history of the game. And for a long time, you just kind of disappeared. So recently, seeing you come back to Magic has been just incredibly cool because it's like a throwback to my own youth, and I'm just super excited.
Yeah, it's been so much fun, and the art directors have been terrific. They've been really giving me some cool stuff. It's been a blast. It's really great to be back.
Yeah, so God, there's so many questions I want to ask you. So I'm trying to sort out and figure out the best way to do this. But I'm going to start with the most recent, which is recently you've been going to a lot of Magic Cons and you've been seeing a lot of the fans and stuff. I know I saw somebody had this limited edition German poster with your art on it from 1,000 years ago that you were signing at the bottom in Las Vegas. And what has it been like to meet all these fans after so long? And coming back and being able to sit there. Cause I know for a lot of us, we're like, oh my God, I will wait 3 hours to meet RKF any day of the week.
It's been crazy, but I was doing all the Channel Fireball shows as well, back in the 2014, 15 through, 2020. And those shows were really cool.
Okay. Yeah.
They were nothing like these shows. These shows are a whole different animal. So it's been wild. I mean, the shows are wild. It's literally a 9-hour signing that never ends, and it's great to meet everybody. And while you're signing, I like to talk, so I'm usually telling stories while I'm signing. But it's been wonderful, actually, reconnecting with a lot of the people and a lot of the fans. It's really been been quite the adventure, the Magic Cons.
Yeah, and. So I was wondering if we could go all the way back to the dawn of your career. And I know I want to talk about the Kickstarters and stuff that you're doing because that's really cool. But how did you get involved with Magic in the first place?
It was just fortuitous events. I was working in comics. I was doing an independent comic called Offerings. And I was hitting a lot of the comic conventions, right? And so I hit this show in Philly, and I actually went to the show to, because I wanted to meet the guys at White Wolf. I really liked, the RPGs. I loved the books. The covers were really cool. Tim Bradstreet was doing some really cool work there. So I went to the show really looking to meet the White Wolf guys. And so I hit the table, And like, Rich Thomas, who's great. We love Rich. But like Rich was at the table and he hired me on the spot. He was like, man, you're hired. Let's just do this. I can't wait to put you on a book. So, I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And I'm walking past this table and there's no banners, no products on the table, just a really cool looking guy with a cowboy hat. And I've got my portfolio and I walk past and he says, I'd like to look at your work if you don't mind. And I was like, well, sure. So I go up to the table, I open my portfolio up, and it was Jesper Meerfers, sitting at the table, the original art
Yeah.
director. And Jesper looks at my work and he just hired me on the spot. And he was good. Jesper's like, I love this. This is exactly what we're looking for. We've got this fantasy game. We don't have a lot of money now, but we will. And he's like, I'd like to hire you right now. Just here's my business card. Call me when you get home. And so I got home and I was like, kind of like, on a high. And I'm thinking, that's great. I hooked up with White Wolf. That other company seemed interesting. And I mentioned it to a gamer friend of mine, right? And I say, hey, listen, have you ever heard of Magic the Gathering? And that was before the first set had come out. And he was like, just flips out. He was like, oh my gosh, they're beta testing this on the West Coast right now. The game is going ballistic. People love it. So I jump back to my portfolio. I'm digging through, like, where is that business card? I got to find the business card. And right down there, wedged between everything else, there was Jesper's business card. So I called him back and we had a great chat. And that's really where he assigned me those 10 legends. So that was right place, right time, perfect synchronicity. The universe is working with you,
And like, because when I look at those arts, and because when I started playing in 1994, right around just after Legends had already come out. So my first set was like The Dark, which was right after that.
Right.
And I remember seeing my friends showing up with cards because they had started before me. So they had cards from Legends. And like the first time I see Dak and Blackblade, all the rest of the art in Magic at the time it felt D&D. It felt very fantasy. It felt very it was cool, but it was just like you understood what you were looking at. But when I saw yours, I was just like, this looks like a comic book cover, or it looks like just the amount of detail that you got into that tiny little thing was like something that my 13-year-old brain wasn't able to comprehend. It was just like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. What the hell is going on? And I know that I am definitely not alone in saying that, like, the kind of the fact that even now, 30 years later, we're still making cards with Dak and Blackblade and the sword and with the character and everything because of how iconic that thing was. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah, it's really crazy. When Jesper, assigned the project, my jaw kind of dropped. I was like, these are exactly the characters that I was developing in my own comics, basically. And, back then you were given free reign. That was, you were given a very brief description. I think Dakon was human warrior with a black blade. And I'm thinking, well, let's go to town on this. So you had the luxury of design the character from the ground floor up. And they were totally cool, in the sense that if you gave them what they were looking for, they were like, this is perfect. Let's go with it. But they were just great characters. I knew it as soon as I got the assignment. I was like, wow, this is stuff I really want to work on.
That it's so strange to think about, especially nowadays with Magic sets being so locked in and like the artist description being very specific and like refer to this part of the art book and here's the world and we have a whole theme. In the olden days, just being like carte blanche seems kind of psycho.
Yeah, it was like, boom, like a name. It wouldn't even be the name that would actually come out on the card. A lot of times, like Ramsey's Overdark was, it was a totally different, name to, that character. Dakon, I'm not sure if Dakon had the same name, so it always changed. It was very fluid. And it was,
I actually saw the original Dak and Blackblade, the creator of Legends. He had sold his whole collection of his like playtest cards to a gentleman, and I got to see a lot of them at one of these conventions. And I ended up buying the original Jedit O'Jonan, but the original Dakin was literally called Dakin, and it was like a picture of Dracula with like this like a clip art image of Vlad Dracula with his like head and the cape and everything. And I'm like, Your version's a little cool in that.
Well, there always that alternative like universe version of some of these characters, I
Yeah.
imagine.
I mean, a lot of those playtest cards were literally just Calvin and Hobbes comics that were just pasted onto
Oh
things.
yeah, right.
Um, um, God, but like I love especially like Nebuchadnezzar that you did, which is such a dreamy and spacey and almost like just ethereal looking piece of art compared like all the rest of them are very action heavy and very like in the moment. And this is just so like evocative. And that was like one of the ones I was just always attracted to. It's just such a beautiful and peaceful image of
You
that
know, it
old
was
man holding his staff
I
and just like
always
the wind
had like
blowing.
a kind of mythological image in my head when like I was working on some of these cards. And for Neb, I remember thinking of Man in MacLear, the Irish, king of the sea. And I saw it as a very
Mm,
organic piece where he was very much part of his environment. Like actually the environment was almost emanating through the character. So I always try to work with like basically you've got your own backstory that kind of feeds into this work in like things that you're fascinated
mm,
with, periods of history, periods of mythology, things that like you want to bring into your work and kind of make manifest. So I was always trying to do that with a lot of these characters, and like we were talking about earlier, back then you could really do it, like it was things were happening
mm.
so fast back then that like we were all working very quickly on those sets. We really were. They would, like you
Do
didn't,
you remember how much time you were given?
there were pretty short deadlines sometimes. The art directors were always pretty cool about things, and they gave you enough advance notice where like you had time to work on it. But a lot of times, you really had to fly through the material, and I kind of like it because it's kind of like deadlines are the mother of all invention. Like you're going to come up with techniques and ways to actually work those pieces where you can do it in a very short timeline, actually. So, like it's the same
Yeah.
these days, like where, the art direction is terrific. They'll give you, they realize we're all traveling. They realize, we're really busy with everything. So there's a little bit of, wiggle room, but not much. A lot of times you really have to, you've got literally 4 to 5 days to paint a painting, sometimes less. But in
That's
that time,
crazy.
you've done all the preliminary sketches. You're ready to go with it anyway. A lot of times I'll work
Mm,
exactly the surface I know I'm going to paint it on. And like I'll do a really detailed sketch. And I almost always know if that's the sketch they're going to pick because I put all the time into it. We've worked out all the kinks, like earlier with other sketches. And so when I get the approval, I'm ready to paint. It's already either on canvas
mm,
or like a really good high grade Bristol paper. So that speeds up the process where you don't have to redraw, the painting for the final painting. But you have to move, very
mm.
quick a lot of the times.
Yeah.
It's fun.
I
It's
mean,
exciting. It's exciting. It's like, this art marathon, like where when you get into it, you're just living, dreaming, sleep. I don't sleep anymore. I'm like dreaming of paintings. Almost okay. Screwed up that area. Get back into it in the morning. So, you know.
what medium do you work in?
Um, like for a lot of this work, I prefer to work, with watercolor and acrylic. I love painting with oil, but the truth is I can move quicker actually painting in those mediums. So most of the magic work, a lot of the early magic work was primarily watercolor with a little bit of acrylic,
Mm,
highlights and a little bit of pen and ink thrown into it, but primarily water media. These days, it depends on what I'm trying to do, the textures I'm trying to get, the look, the atmosphere. And, if it's something that I want to be really vivid and really, textural, I'll work in acrylic. And if it's something I want to be softer and, like a little bit more on the mystical side, I still work with water media, but a lot of mixed media, like in
that's so
between.
cool. Um, so when in Modern Masters 2, they had brought back the story of Dak and Blackblade, and they had the character come back as a planeswalker and show up on a bunch of different arts. And you were, of course, invited back to redraw or do a new take on this character 30 years later. Uh, what was that like? Like,
Oh, man.
I know you had been doing some stuff, but like, was it cool when they came back? It's like, hey, we want you to redraw your most famous
So
piece of
cool.
art.
It was completely unexpected. I got Black Blade reforged, for like I think it was a Secret Lair
Yeah.
a couple of years before. And I was like, whoa, Black
Yeah.
Blade reforged. This is pretty cool.
When that came out, I lost my mind.
But when Shadow Slayer came out, he finally gets his planeswalker wings. Come on, he was always a planeswalker. If you look at the lore, kind of, But
yes, exactly.
when that project came through, like my mouth dropped. I was like, oh yeah, this is fun. This is going to be very interesting. So,
did you have to go back and look at the old sketches and try to figure out what you wanted to look like?
Good question. But I understand now with the art direction, and it has to be like this. These are established characters. You have to work very closely with their design teams. It makes perfect sense to me. So with Decon Shadow Slayer, it was a combination of my ideas and what the art developers had in mind. So it was really cool. It was more of a collaboration, and I really loved what they came up with. So it was like really easy for me to groove on that. Where I'll change a few things here and maybe something here, but it was close enough to the original Decon that I just thought it worked. And I was happy to work with all their design notes. But a real thrill. I did the painting way too big.
Yeah.
I got so psyched up. I'm like, I'm going to do a 4 foot by 6 foot painting. Don't do 4 6.
Oh my God.
They're lovely paintings, but we reduced these cards down to a pretty large degree.
4 foot by 6 foot. That's huge.
Yeah, it was huge, man.
Damn, man. Okay, I want to talk about the fact that
if I had my way, I'd put 10 foot by 10 foot be like magic painting. Might take a while, but it'd be fun to do.
That would be the coolest thing in the world, I think. That would be someone should pay you to do like a big mural. That would be so sick.
Right?
I don't know where I would hang it, but it would be amazing.
Oh. You better have very big walls.
So in Double Masters, they had asked you to come back to do a bunch of these extra bonus cards. And I was fascinated because they are very different from the other styles that you've historically done. Like, for instance, Elenda, the Dusk Rose, is lying in this field of like almost water, like water lilies or something like Monet style. And it feels more pointillistic than what you normally do. And I was just curious if you could talk about some of those cards and the process there.
Like everything else, you're trying to stretch the limits. I don't like to repeat myself over and over again. But that being said, there are a lot of, images I like to go back to, my more classic style. When that set came in, the material was so evocative that I wanted to do something a little bit more textural. And that's just after I did Toxic Deluge. I forget which set that was. I think it was just a little bit prior. But I was painting these really textural, canvases at the time. So it was really fun.
They were actually in the same set.
Oh, that's right. Exactly. Toxic? Toxic was in the set.
Yeah, Toxic was in the main set, and then the other ones are the bonus cards.
Yeah, kaboom. You're right. But it's funny when you're doing 5 or 6 paintings at the same time. It's like you're working on a series of paintings that you would be working on for a gallery. I wanted all those paintings to work very nicely. If you put them on the wall and put them all together, I wanted paintings that looked really sweet and told a story. Had a certain narrative to them. So yeah, I wanted to try some new techniques, basically. Cut loose a little.
Yeah, because it was they were really vibrant and evocative pieces of art compared to because a lot of the magic art, especially at that era, is dark and grim or very realistic or something, and this just felt like we all know when we see one of your paintings that you've got a style that's very recognizable you. And this was wow, he's the Dragon Lord Dramoka you did is so unique and trippy looking compared to your normal art. And I was just damn, this is so cool.
Tom Jenkins actually assigned that. And Tom is great. I love working with him. And he's great. He's got a great sense of humor too, because the first sketch I sent him to Dramoka, I would say it kind of looked like Dramoka, but I definitely put my own spin on it. And Tom is great. He's always really like that, Richard, but let's get back a little bit to the closer to the original version. I'm okay. And that's always code word for rein it in. So it was, you're almost looking at these paintings, I'm a child of my times. And I look at it almost like a concept album. Each one is like, if you put
Mm,
that on an album cover, it could work. And, like
yes.
with a lot of projects, I kind of have that in the back of my mind when I'm working.
Yeah, like a lot of the art that you've done looks like they could be covers of books, covers of comic books or covers of like art books or yeah, like metal albums like
Right.
Corlash Hair to Black Blade, which is just such a sick like I would listen that sounds like a death metal album right there.
That's
So
us.
cool.
Goulash.
Yeah,
This is
right. Just like
goulash. But,
but you also do just yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
it's all right. Metal voice is hard to do these days. That's
Yeah, I
weird.
know.
But, like, I would love to do another Corlash. Please send me Corlash again. Such a cool character,
That was a cool I mean, I love the way the Minotaur horns come out. It
right?
just that's a cool looking piece of art.
Right, right.
It it's cool because like half of your art looks like very death metal, very like crunchy, and then the other half is like I would look at like Glass Asp, which is just the time spiral snake that you did that just looks like this beautiful, almost Rebecca Gay style, just like evocative, gorgeous little snake, and it stands out so much compared to the rest of your artwork because of how like tranquil it feels comparatively,
That's funny,
despite
actually.
it's a snake trying to bite you,
It
but it's just
was
like it's
not a
very chill
tranquil
and
initially, that was not tranquil. So I had the glass,
oh.
was like launching himself through space and looking to like grab, like some warrior by the neck. And the art director was like, "Nah, I think we're moving a little bit away from the initial." And so I toned it down a couple notches. Like on a historical note, I like the painting, but it's not my favorite painting. I like him though.
Mm.
Cool.
What is your favorite?
I try not to play favorites. It's really hard. You're
Well,
always looking forward to the
I
next.
mean, okay. I mean, when you do 100 and something paintings, not all of them are going to be your all-time favorite one, right?
That's
Like, it's just some of them you're just like, it's fine. It's a snake. It does a snake thing.
yeah. I
I'm
remember.
getting the feeling that you have a story for literally every card.
I kind of do actually. That wouldn't be. It's really
Oh
fun.
my God.
People would ask me like, when did you paint Dagon? What was going on? I'll be like, oh, lightning outside. The whole house shook. My propane tank started. Giant explosion in the backyard. It came to me. Yeesh. You know. Well, the reality
Well, I
was
mean, like,
probably 3 in the morning, and you were working away, feverishly.
mm, man, that's so that's so funny. Yeah, because like people come to you and they're just like expecting some kind of like epic, and you're like, "Look, dude, I had too much coffee that day, and I drew the jitters into an earthquake. What do you want?"
That's it. I had a
Um,
an argument with my significant other, or I stubbed my toe really hard, actually, and that a bit of pain, But anyways, yeah,
oh my god.
no, you are
Um,
trying to put yourself into a psychological state, and that's the truth. Actually, you work yourself up for a lot of these pieces. Howard Pyle,
mm,
father of American illustration or illustration in general. He had a great line, and Howard was like, "If you want to paint the character, you have to be the character. You have to
mm,
visualize yourself as the character." And it's great advice for any artist, any illustrator, any artist. You really do want to visualize, put yourself into that state of mind where you can almost feel what that character might be feeling, like in the moment that you're going to paint him in. So yeah, there really is actually. You work yourself up psychically on a lot of this stuff, actually.
yeah, because like that's a lot like acting where you're trying to inhabit the character, you're trying to become this and get yourself into an emotional state where you
Yeah.
because especially in painting your emotions come through in what you're doing, and the kind of art that you create ends up being a reflection of what you're feeling at the time. um but I wanted to ask about these most recent paintings that you had done for Lorwyn Eclipsed, which were a Deep Channel Duelist and Marrow Sky Swimmer,
Yeah.
because they look very abstract and like almost like Drew Tucker almost in the old days. It was just like very like color images. You can see the like merfolk inside of it, but it's more about like the emotion kind of pouring through.
Oh yeah. Well, number one, they're underwater. I mean, even if you
Mm,
have fish eyes or lids over your eyes, things are going to look a little bit different. It'll be more like a kaleidoscope of color and shape and form. And number two, actually, I thought it would look really cool. Basically, I wanted something.
It
Like I said,
does. It does. You're absolutely right.
to stay fresh, you have to kind of like approach the work a little bit differently from set to set. Like I said, there are times where that classic style is going to look great. There are other times where you want to, push the limits a little bit. Try something, you know, a little bit
Right.
more, abstract or,
Yeah, because I mean, I think back to like the art that you did that impacted me the most back when I was playing was like Mirage era, when you did like Boomerang and Dissipate, and they're just these big, beautiful, colorful, like almost flowy images. It's like they feel very painterly compared to like illustratory, if that makes sense to you. It's like they just feel like you could see the marks you've made on the canvas itself coming through the artwork.
yeah.
And I don't know, I've always loved them. I mean, my friends and I used to sit and just take out like Scryfall and open up your artwork and be like, damn, that's cool looking. So,
Thank you.
um,
That's great. Thanks.
yeah, I was an English major and not an art major, so I don't know the proper words for it, but I do know that it's just like there's like emotion and feeling come through your art really strongly. Like you look at any of these pieces and you can definitely get a sensation of mood and of like vibrancy and of like what is actually happening here. And I think that's very hard to do, especially when you have to just put out so many of these things. Like Vampiric Tutor, you see this guy just like reaching out into this space and summoning this thing, and it just looks so sick. And I don't know, the Grand Abolisher is a little creepy though, where it's like that's actually kind of terrifying.
Well, what's his line? I've had enough of you, heretic. I mean, that kind of guy is probably going to be a little bit uncompromised. You'd hate to run into it.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to sit next to him in a restaurant. He does not look like a fun time.
Maybe.
So can
a couple drinks.
Can you talk about that force of will behind you?
It's a table length mat. I thought it looked cool on the wall, basically. Setting up the shot for the interview.
I mean, it does. It's very cool. Like it was really sick to see you taking on one of the most iconic cards in Magic and giving your own kind of spin to it. And like I don't know, I think it's really cool.
Well, it's not.
His face in that picture is just very upsetting.
That was one of those sets, though, where I was like, the 4 tutors and Force of Will. I actually called the art director, and I was like, "Are you sure about this?" He's like, "Yeah, we're sure about it." I was like, "Well, okay, let's go." But it was funny too because that was a very, very tight deadline on that entire set. So that really was, like I just went right around the clock for like half a month. I basically,
that's crazy.
Yeah, there were like 4 to 5 days a piece on those paintings. And it was just like literally just all day long. Like right in, like crash out at 2:00, wake up and do it again. But it was exciting.
The artist lifestyle. So
it comes in waves. In all honesty, you're working really hard for like months, and then you get a little break in the action. You get a chance to recharge, your batteries to a certain degree. When you're working hard.
Have you ever been given a card description or an art where you were like, I don't know what you want me to do here?
Let me think. That's a good question, actually. Normally, no. You could probably give me, pins and needles on like an asteroid, and I'd be like, huh, okay, pins and needles on an asteroid. I think I've done that. That could be cool. Yes. If you made the pins really big and you can see the pins, they got a certain shine, shimmer to them, possibly. But yeah.
Do you prefer it when they give you more direction or less?
Oh, it's a combination. But in all honesty, I'm artist. Come on. The less direction you give me, the happier. You're always happy. Like the Grand Abolisher, he is creepy. They let me really redesign the character on that, and they just let me run with it. I hit him with like 3 sketches, and they were like, "You know what, Richard? We really like these. Go with it." And so I think we basically narrowed it down to the one design that's the final Grand Abolisher. And it's always a blast when you get a chance to work on something like that. I like the art direction.
Yeah,
sometimes you need it. you need the art direction. Like you're not completely clear on the concept. You want to make sure that card works. You're doing, going the right directions. So
Mm.
both ways to work are cool by me, basically.
So there was a long span of time between when you stopped working on Magic and when you had come back. What were you doing in that time? Like, what sorts of other projects have you done historically?
It was great, actually. Tell you the truth, I think I'm really glad I took a break at this for a few years, and I'll tell you why. When I
Mm.
came back, I was really, really fresh, and I'd learned so much. Like technically. So like basically, when I wound down the
Mm.
Magic stuff, I went back into comics. I published a 50-page graphic novel with heavy metal. I was doing a lot of fine art, like installation size pieces, like on canvas, and that's really at that period. That's what I wanted to do. Like
Mm.
wanted to break that down and come up with techniques that really worked at that size. Expressionistic techniques, a lot of abstract qualities to those
Mm.
pieces that I did at that, and it was great. I really learned so much about the way mediums work. I was still fairly young at the time. You know, you're always learning. When you stop,
Yeah.
old cliche, but you should be learning, trying to kind of push that limit on every piece. So in that time, I was doing a lot of commercial work for other people. I was doing a lot of fine art,
Mm.
and I was doing the comic, work again. And honestly, we got back from California. We renovated the house, and I had children. Actually, we had twin boys right about then. So there was, a couple of years there where you're raising kids. Pretty intensive for the first
Yeah.
6 to 8 years to 10 years, but a great time actually.
Yes.
I
6 to
learned
8
a
to
lot.
10.
It's or forever basically, but it's all good. Um, but it's like,
My son just turned 12. I understand.
oh, my
Yeah.
son's just graduated. My gosh, 30 years later, all my kids are out of college. Believe it or not,
Oh my God.
you
That's
know.
so much.
Um,
Oh my God. Yeah. That because like I wanted to ask you because I was talking to Brian David Marshall and he was like, "Yeah, man, Richard's got a lot of great stories about being in the comics industry." So I was wondering if we could talk about that a little bit. Like,
well,
um,
DBM
do
rule.
you think that there was a hmm?
I said, Brian David Marshall rules, and
Yeah, he's a
fun.
dear friend of mine.
Oh, he's great. We love Brian. But the first comic that I published, the first independent I published with Brian. He had Eternity
What
Comics.
really?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the first thing at
Oh,
first.
that's crazy.
Oh no, and he was great. It was just such a cool company at the time. It was, like a small stable of guys. The independent comics were like exploding at the time. They were really selling some big numbers. And Brian was just awesome. He was so organized and so cool and so good at promotion, that we were really building that company up. But yeah, that was the first guy I published with, so we go back. And it's really funny
So
now, all these years
it must have been strange then to run into him in Magic, right?
oh no, all these years later, here we are, we both joked about it. Yeah, we were hanging out in Phoenix, we're just like, yeah, 30 years later, but yeah, no, it was a
So
hot time in comics. The
when
80s
you're doing,
and 90s were cool. The 80s and 90s were the
yeah,
heyday in comics. They really were, where you could actually make a living doing an independent book, you know. And it
yeah.
was funny that all led.
Like a lot of the small publishers were getting big there, like Image and a
Oh
bunch
yeah,
of these other very like tiny kind of like garage door, like garage room style, like indie publishers were putting out a lot of comic books that were just really cool and edgy and evocative.
yeah.
Yeah, I read a lot of those back in the day too. So
Yeah, it was funny actually. The second publisher, I hooked up with the guys from Cry for Dawn, Joe Monks and Joe Linster.
mm,
Joe is still really active in comics now. He's an amazing artist. He's incredible. But that was such a fun company. It was just like four. I think there were four of us, as far as the artists go, and we were all writing our own books and drawing our own books. But it was a really tight knit crew. It was good times actually traveling with those guys. And the shows were so much fun. Like San Diego was so much different than it is these days, and so is New York Comic Con. You could literally walk up to those
yeah.
shows in the day. You could just show up without reserving a table, and they'd be like, "Great, comic artist, you're in." we got a table for you in Artist Alley, you know?
That's insane.
It was so accommodating. It was beautiful.
So when you're doing a comic, how does your art like, because when you're trying to tell a story through a comic with your artwork and you have to cause it to flow and stuff versus when you're painting just a single scene on a magic card, um can you talk a little bit about what the differences are and like what it feels like to try to have to extend your art to the 30 pages as opposed to just telling like a vignette in a panel?
Oh yeah, no, it's it's a different animal to a certain degree, but like I'm a perfectionist. Like even on the comics, basically I approach every panel as an individual painting. You're putting that time into that attention to detail. It's more of a production line in the sense that you have to work quickly. I'm glad I'm a very fast penciler. I work out of my imagination. I really don't use reference for anything. Unless I'm drawing a car or maybe a lion or something. Most of this is out of my imagination, and so you work very quickly with the pencils. You make sure those layouts. You set yourself up with 3 or 4 pages, and you're painting at the same time. Basically, when you start to wear out conceptual end, penciling the work, you go back to the painting, and you're just kind of like meeting yourself in the middle, almost. Where you're penciling and painting at the same time. But yeah, you got to fly, with comics. I mean, honestly, part of the reason I'm doing what I'm doing right now is this is really quite wonderful. You can make a, like a nice living off individual pieces. Comics are a lot more work. But that being said, I've been developing that graphic novel I talked about in my first Kickstarter, Lost Book of Kings, and that's ready to roll. Actually, I'm
That's
getting pretty
cool.
close. Yeah, I can't wait. Actually, I'm really excited.
So when you're drawing for like a graphic novel or a comic, do you have to like uh, conceptually think about where the words are going to go and like
Yeah,
leave
totally.
spaces for them to put them in, or do you just kind of let it flow?
Oh no, you should. That's very well. That's one of the nice things where you can abbreviate the work a little bit. That there's going to be a panel, a descriptive panel. Like a spoken caption, whatever it's going to be. That's going to be there, so you'll leave that a little bit looser, and where to really pay attention to detail. So it's a time saver to a certain degree. Actually, you can break it down. You want something to be there, but
Hmm.
it doesn't have to be all that elaborate. You know. So yeah, very much I have that in mind actually. And a lot of times the story will kind of tell you, you have your rough script when you start working, but as you start to develop the ideas and the story itself, then other sequences come to mind. Get different directions than you initially started with. So it kind of evolves. As you're working on the book. It's like, did when you write a cool paragraph, everything kind of comes out of that paragraph. All of a sudden, you've got it. You've got the idea. You've got the concept. And it's much easier to write it. But until you find that first paragraph or that first sentence, you can be struggling a little bit. So, things change quite a bit.
Yeah.
I kind of had I like Stan Lee's, version, the early Marvel version, where he had just lightly script something and then let the artist roll with the concept. And I think it's actually a great way to work. A lot of great ideas, a lot of spontaneity
Mm.
out of that.
Yeah. Because the artist then put something on the page, and you're like, "Oh, that's a really cool idea," and then you can adjust the story to
Right.
work with whatever that new image is.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, can you talk? Because I've been going through your art again, and I've been thinking about like cool ones. And you drew a card called Field of Souls a long time ago. It was a white card from like Tempest Block, and it's just so can you like it's got this dude with a harp floating over these spirits that look like clouds, but it's just so psychedelic almost and
Yeah, right.
very, very cool and evocative looking. And it stands out on the page from like all the rest of your like everlasting torment and whatever. Just
I
like
love that title.
it just it's so cool looking. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that one or if you remember it.
I totally remembered actually. It's funny the sets are starting to, slip where you're like, what's that? Was that Mirage?
Yeah,
Or
this one came out like from 100 years ago, so I can believe you not remembering it right off. It was from
but
like
actually,
Tempest.
hey, I will say this, there was it was interesting the way we worked back then. You weren't working on much large, your pieces weren't large. For a long time, we were
Mm,
working 6.5 inches by maybe 8 inches. I forget the exact dimensions, but they were relatively small paintings. The cool thing was you could work quickly. And like you could also plan how that, that painting was going to reproduce on the card. Whenever you take a smaller image,
Mm,
break it down, it still has, like a lot of those qualities it has at full size. With larger paintings, the painting may look beautiful, but you really have to plan even closer because when you reduce it down to card size, you can lose a lot of stuff. So with Field of Souls, I remember just trying to almost have, like a spiritual and mechanistic side to it, where there it was almost like a Field of Souls generator, where the souls were like
mm,
flying. But yeah, that
yeah.
was a really cool set, actually. Really cool set. I
Yeah, I
seem
don't
to
know. I'm just like, it's like, go ahead.
oh no, no. As I look back through the mists of time and I seem to remember, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you say that you did these all on such small canvases, and I'm looking back at some of these like older arts, like there is so much detail, and like your line work is so detailed and narrow, and there's like some of these things, like I don't even know, like random comments from Mirage, like searing spear Ascari is just like insanely, just like you got really deep into the nooks and crannies of every part of this person's armor and skin,
I
and
love that
like it's
actually. I want to do a mat of like
it's
series.
cool. It's really cool looking.
Can't wait to do a
Uh,
mat of that guy. It was always actually like one of my
oh man,
favorite like images. It's a cool image. And that was a
yeah,
large
that and
painting.
like Caravex Purge.
Yeah, yeah. Carfax Perch is
Yeah.
cool. I seem to remember. Yeah, right.
Well,
And
like,
that was
dude,
nice actually.
because it,
Right about then, you could actually work larger. Like where initially you were sending the paintings to WotC. You didn't scan them at home. Like the internet really didn't exist.
oh my
It
god,
could, like a lot of guys didn't have the equipment, right? So when you finished a project,
yeah,
you sent them all to the home office. They would scan them, format them, and send the paintings back to you. So I think that's part
oh
of the
man,
reason they had us working a little bit smaller back then. But right about Searing
cheaper
Spear,
to ship.
yeah, and store and keep track of. I mean, like, can you imagine, like, hey, the entire set just came and everybody's working 3 foot by 4 feet, Oh,
Oh
better
god.
like we better get a warehouse, where are we gonna keep this stuff? So
Oh
I
my
think that
god.
has something to do with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. So tell me about this Kickstarter that you're doing now, because I know you already did one once. So what is this new upcoming Kickstarter going to be?
It's gonna be great. I'm really excited. Like I'm super excited. We've been working around the clock on this really for the last, my gosh, forever, basically. So what it'll be will be tokens and playmats, my personal token deck. But what's going to make it, like what I'm really excited about is I have a lot of standalone images from the graphic novel that I had this project in mind for a while. They look great on cards. We formatted a lot of this stuff already. And I'm also digging back into my archives, and I've got some deep archives. So we'll have some classic work that people haven't seen in a long, long time, reformatted for the token set. And a lot of like images nobody's ever seen before, paintings that I've been holding back, until we launched with this. So it'll be like I call it the treasures of Zell and Ra, because Zell is like the lead character in the graphic novel Lost Book of Kings. So you'll meet Zell, and you'll also meet some archetypical characters from the book, as well as some of the world I've been building. Can't wait! It looks amazing. We're also going to have play mats, and it'll be a celebration of early Magic, where it's all the classic designs we were just talking about, up to about Mirage,
Yeah.
but stuff I've never printed
Oh,
before.
sick.
Like that. I know. I'm excited about that too. But it's an introduction. What's cool with Treasures of Zell and Ra. It's also an introduction to the graphic novel, some of the characters and ideas and concepts within the graphic novel. And it's funny when I format
So
all my.
what's the?
Nope, you go.
No, keep going.
It's funny when you. It's almost like I've been working on this graphic novel on every project that I've ever worked on. It was like what you were saying about Dakon. I mean, Dakon was kind of a character I would have designed for myself.
Mm.
So when I look at a lot of the work that I've done over the last 30 years, it all integrates really well together. Actually, into the current work I'm working on now, and also that earlier work. And with the token set, I'm really excited. It's just been so much fun playing with that universe and integrating the cards so they work.
I'm
You know,
excited to see it.
yeah, I can't wait actually. So that's
Can
coming
you
soon.
tell us about the graphic novel? What's the story
It turns out that
or
human
premise,
history.
I guess?
Well, no, basically, actually, that history, goes back far further than we, even can begin to imagine. And basically, in the book, it goes back to the late Cretaceous period, and it's just a world teeming with life and possibilities. Like ancient civilizations, the earliest demigods, the earliest gods, and the lead character the book starts out. You'll meet other characters as I take this further. Zell is he is the only human, son of the goddess herself, the one demigod that she has. So his father is human, and she's obviously the goddess, and he's just the ultimate trickster. He is, the ultimate contrarian. Just a very cool, like a warrior, but mystic, kind of character. So yeah, it's just a lot of the ideas I've been developing in that are going to kind of permeate into the token set. It's
That's
my
awesome.
version of the history of the world.
Man, that's so cool. I am very genuinely excited about it because I play a lot of token decks and I love to have fancy tokens. And
Right?
having your art on tokens seems like it would be a blast.
Oh, I can't wait to get
When does the Kickstarter launch?
June 10th. We launch on June 10th. It's right
Cool.
around the corner.
Awesome.
Yeah, so very soon. Very soon.
Oh man. So in your history of working with Wizards and with other companies and having done this now for so long, what has been the most rewarding part of doing all of this?
Oh, all of it. The community itself. I mean, these guys are great. Honestly, when you do the shows, I've I'm way more interested in a lot of the guys I meet than I am with my own stuff. They're really cool guys. Everybody's got an interesting, interesting story to tell. And so it's been a chance to really connect with just such an audience.
Mm.
In the beginning, the question I always got way back when was, "Do you think Magic will be around in 20 years?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And that was probably back in 1995 or 1996. It just had such a following already. There was so much excitement around the game. So it's been a chance to connect with people that you would never connect with in other industries. A chance to travel, a chance to work on projects that you'd really love to work on. I'm excited every time when I open up my email in the morning, and it's always out of the blue. It's like you're a spy, right? All of a sudden, you get your email from the art director, and you're being activated again. And it's always like this. All right, I'm back in business. So it's always
We're
like
getting
just
the team back together again. Let's go.
basically, yeah. So it's always a real thrill when I hear from these guys. But there's just so much around this.
And
It's really hard to express and put into words. I mean, wow, wow.
Okay, so is there a card that you've always wished somebody would ask you about and nobody does, or have everybody asked you about every card you've done?
No, there's really no card. At some time, I've been asked about that card. At some point, at some moment. I've got a card here.
Well,
actually.
it's every card is somebody's favorite, right?
Well, that's it. Actually, yeah. You never know, too. And they become very cool where they, yeah.
Cool.
There's a history. Everybody attaches their history to the card. Their own history to the card. It's like honestly, music. You just remember when you heard that song the first time in your life. When you're listening to it.
Yes.
Yeah, you can remember exactly where you were.
Yes, 100%.
Where you were at. What was going on in your life at that moment. Yeah. So, yeah.
100%. Okay, I'm going to ask about one last thing, and then we can call it good. And that is a card that has been my pet card since I was in middle school, which is Elvish Farmer from Fallen Empires, which is this just old geezer with mushrooms and things. And it's just such a beautiful and cool piece of art. But nobody plays this. Nobody knows what this card is because everybody forgets that set entirely. But it's always held a near and dear place in my heart. So I was like, Okay, I'm going to ask you about it now, and then before I look dumb.
At the time, like I was
Yeah.
farming. No, I wasn't farming at the time, actually. I live on it, and I wasn't farming. But I have a lot of respect and admiration for like elvish farmers in particular. Now, honestly, and who wouldn't? You better.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But,
It's like, well, you don't remember this random garbage card from Fallen Empires 1,000 years ago?
I can't believe that set is so maligned. It was a great set. The art was great. All the guys.
The art was
work.
Yeah.
I'm always
that set, like, it came out really quickly. Like, it was designed very quickly. So,
yeah.
Man. Well, anyway, sir, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been an absolute pleasure and a blast. And I'm genuinely honored that you came on and we could talk about this. And if folks wanted to learn more about you or your Kickstarter or anything like that, where could they go?
We have our launch page running right now. If you hit my Facebook page, you'll notice I put up a post, like my last post. They can actually catch the link there. But if you actually put in Richard Kane Ferguson tokens, the launch page will actually pop up. And please sign up. And, you can also, go to our, website and find out more. We're just putting together the ad copy for that right now, but you'll be able to, learn more about the project. And follow me on Facebook, basically, because it's time to get busy on social media again and start putting out a lot of stuff. So, I'll be talking about the project, for the next few, the next couple of weeks until we launch. So you can catch me there.
That's awesome.
Shivam, I had a blast with that. It was really great to talk to you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am truly, the honor was all mine. And folks, as always, if you want to find me, you can find me at Shivam Bhatt on Blue Sky, or you can find this podcast anywhere podcasts are sold, or on YouTube every Tuesday. Thanks to my editor, Dan. And you can also hear me on Shivam Wielder Love Magic or on the Chronicles of Dragonlance podcast. And remember, my friend, it's not magic without the gathering, and we'll see you